days in terms of how campaigning works.
Yeah, indeed, it's going to have an enormous impact. I want to bring in Professor Ronald Sullivan, who's a professor of law at Harvard Law School and joins us now from Massachusetts. Good morning. Thank you for your company. What's your initial reaction?
Well, my initial reaction is sadness. You just hate to see something like this. Modern democracies are characterized by a contest of ideas, not guns. And that's the essential feature of how we attempt to make decisions in modern democratic experiments. That is, we talk to each other. And sometimes the discourse can be coarse, but it's always discourse. And when guns become involved and presidential candidates are shot at, that does not augur well. So a profound sadness that this has happened, and I'm grateful that the former president seems to be okay from the initial reports.
Ronald, what do you think will happen in terms of the discourse in the coming days? And in fact, we're already seeing it at the moment. We've heard from some witnesses who are quite emotional, Trump supporters, who were saying that there's going to be war if Donald Trump is not president, and that an event like this will only cause more division.
Well, that's precisely the sort of discourse that we do not need at this point. And I think it's incumbent upon the people at the top of the ticket, former President Trump and President Biden, to set a tone that suggests to everybody, to all Americans, that the idea of America is bigger than any individual candidate, and that we have to do the sorts of things to keep our democracy healthy. So I just heard your report that President Biden is taking down his ads, and I just really hope that the leadership on both sides can take this as a sign that we need to sort of change the tenor. So I really hope that happens. If we don't, it's an invitation to more forms of violence, and that doesn't help anyone.
And when you say change the tenor, what do you believe needs to happen here?
Well, I think, as I said in the opening, the contest of ideas is one of the central premises to all modern democracies, but specifically the United States democracy. And if you think about it, the idea is as radical as it is powerful. If you go back to antiquity and march through history until very recent history, the people with the biggest guns were in charge. And here, if you have this notion that that ideas can carry the day, that people can talk and debate and vote, and really the power of an idea carries the day. It's a relatively new concept in world history, but it's the sort of thing that doesn't just happen all by itself. In other words, democratic institutions are not self-sustaining. We have to roll up our sleeves and work to maintain these democratic traditions. So if we don't do that, then things will not turn out too well. And that's my worry. So I think it's really, again, incumbent on people, the leadership, to remind the population that this idea is bigger than any party, than any candidate, and that we have to do and we have to behave in a way that's in service to this idea.
Ronald, there will be wall-to-wall media coverage of this event. We've been on this rolling for quite some time now. In the United States, it's a different media landscape than we have in Australia. Just give us a sense of how this is being covered and how this will be covered by the US media.
Well, it is wall-to-wall, as you say. I'm not sure if Australia has the 24-hour news cycles like we do here, but it will literally be on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they will roll that footage again and again and again. I do hope that the commentators who are on the news studios will do what they can to lower temperatures. So we don't need people talking about war and civil war. Rather, we need people talking about how might we come together as Americans in order to protect this rather young experiment when you look at it in terms of world history.
And that's the traditional media in the US, but there's also social media that is new for this political assassination. This is the first attempted assassination since we've had the social media era. So what are your concerns about that side of, I guess, the media?
That's an excellent point. And as you point out, it is untested at this point. Social media, in addition to being untested, is unbounded. That is, people can say anything they want and they can do it anonymously. So, you know, that is a tension in our political system here. So freedom of speech is an important value in the United States. But it also has its costs, and its cost is that people can say anything for the most part and rile people up unnecessarily. So the hope is that individuals will behave responsibly. You can't police it. You can't force people not to say certain things. But the notion is that citizens should behave responsibly. Now, that's a normative concept, and again, one that you can't police. But we'll have to see the ways in which the new sort of media responds to situations like this. As you point out, we haven't seen it before. So we're all going to learn a little something, and we're going to learn pretty quickly what happens.
Right, Ronald Sullivan, a professor of law at Harvard Law School, joining us there from Massachusetts. We really thank you. We really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Well, Phoebe Hosier is an ABC producer in the United States with her partner Sam Harley. They were both at the rally and told us what they witnessed.
We were standing on the right-hand side, probably about 50 metres away from Donald Trump, and I just heard what I thought was firecrackers going off, and I didn't really know what it was at first, and then I saw the Secret Service on the roof further off to the left fire off a volley of shots, and that's when I knew that, you know, this was serious, and so we all hit the deck, and yeah, it was panic and chaos. Everyone was really scared.
I ducked down straight away, and I found the crowd's reaction to be mixed. Initially, only a few people just in front of us ducked down, along with myself and a few others around us. But there were others who didn't seem so perturbed about the fact that these were gunshots we were hearing.
When Donald Trump was being led off the stage and it was seemed that he was okay, people were chanting USA, USA, USA.
It felt very patriotic, yes. Yeah. Defiant. And then we were quickly led out of there, out of the showgrounds. We were hearing things all around. There was a woman to my left that said, of course, this would happen in Pennsylvania. There were some who were kind of walking out relatively calmly and others who were just in hysterics. I managed to speak with a man and his fiancée who were further to our right, closer to where a man had been shot and injured. He said that he saw a man shot in the stomach. His fiancée was basically mute. She was so disturbed by what she'd seen. It was pretty horrific.
Beforehand, you had to line up, go through metal detectors, check your belongings. You couldn't really take much in at all. You couldn't have a bag. And then in terms of security, there was a heavy police force presence there. And then the shots that you saw that we took, there was 4 snipers on the roof behind either side of Donald Trump and the podium, and they were constantly surveying the area. Yeah, it was quite a lot. So it was surprising that something like this happened because they were continually looking around for threats.
That was Phoebe Hosier there, who's an ABC producer in the US, and also her partner, Sam Harley, who witnessed that event in Pennsylvania and were speaking about their shock. And I mean, it must have been a really unsettling event to witness, but they were talking about the crowd's reaction when it happened. They said it was a mixed reaction. You know, obviously there was a lot of shock, but then when Donald Trump, following that attack, raised his fist in the air, we heard a lot of people cheering as well.
Yeah, shocked and afraid, and giving details about what they say they saw and heard from the Secret Service. They're responding and shooting at this shooter, and that was the first reports that we've heard today about the specifics around what exactly happened immediately after that moment right there. Donald Trump says that he was shot in the ear at the political rally, describing the buzzing sound and that whizzing sound and feeling a bullet ripping through skin, and has really thanked those first responders and paid his respects to those people that died there. Let's bring in News Breakfast Michael Rowland again. And Michael, we can still hear that there is, it sounds like that crowd there around you is getting louder. What's happening there?
Listen, Dan, it's as much as I can hear, they are chanting Pakistan, Pakistan. So it's a protest clearly to do with Pakistan. It's got nothing to do with the events here.
Right. And what more can you tell us there? We can see the White House off in the distance behind you of the reaction on the ground in the United States.
Shock and convulsion about this horrible act of political violence that we saw unfold in Pennsylvania earlier today. As you mentioned, Donald Trump has said that he was shot by a bullet in the top right of his ear. We all saw those images of him collapsing to the ground behind the dais in front of the rally there at Butler, Pennsylvania. Secret Service agents leaping to the stage, getting him off stage. We've had confirmation of a few things. One, importantly, Donald Trump is safe and well. He is recovering in hospital. Two, that one spectator was killed. Two others were critically injured, and the shooter was killed as well. Really appalling scenes there we saw in Pennsylvania, and political leaders from right across the spectrum, Republican, Democrat, former presidents, have been united in firstly expressing their thoughts towards Donald Trump and wishing him a speedy recovery, but also saying uniformly that political violence, this attempted assassination, has absolutely no place in US politics.
The Homeland Security Secretary, Michael, has said that the department is taking every possible measure to ensure the safety of President Biden, Trump, and all their respective campaigns. They said maintaining the security of the presidential candidates and their campaign events is one of our department's most vital priorities. We know at this stage that the Biden campaign is also pausing all ads following the shooting. They're working to pull down their television ads as quickly as possible, so we can see how this is impacting the campaign and also the security questions around the remainder of this campaign. But what do you think this will mean for the campaign and for even the Republican National Convention as well?
Which was scheduled, and I use the word scheduled advisedly, to kick off on Monday. I'd be very surprised indeed if that kicked off on Monday, if it wasn't moved already. What you'll see is a cessation in campaigning, and we've seen that already with the Biden campaign, as you say, ceasing those TV ads with the focus squarely on the health of the former president. Yes, there'll be, when campaigning does resume, there'll be much tighter security, rest assured about that. Possibly a reconsideration of outdoor rallies, given the available evidence at this stage, and the investigation is continuing, that the shooter was outside the rally, was in an elevated position, and this is actually directly from the Secret Service, an elevated position, but still with a line of sight towards the former president on stage. So perhaps outdoor rallies may fall by the wayside. We've seen already within minutes of the attempted assassination happening in Pennsylvania, Secret Service agents swoop here at the White House. My colleague Jade McMillan and colleague Simon Winter behind the camera were preparing to go live to ABC back home. They were whisked away by security. Looking behind the camera, I see lots of Secret Service agents behind me, forming a bit of a security cordon. Greater security around the candidates, as you say. Extra security, according to New York authorities, around Trump Tower. I think America is quite rightly on edge tonight, given what we saw unfold in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, Michael, we were mid-cross with Jade McMillan when the security swooped, and it all happened very, very quickly. After that, we heard from Joe Biden, the US president, saying that there is no place in America for this violence. It's sick and we cannot allow it to happen. We've now also heard from the Secretary of Defence, Lloyd Austin, who says the entire Department of Defence condemns this violence, which has absolutely no place in our democracy. This is not the way that we resolve our differences in America, and it must never be. I'm relieved that reports indicate former President Trump is safe, and I'm praying for him and his family and everyone affected by this appalling incident. We were hearing not too long ago from Professor of Law Ron Sullivan from Harvard University saying that really talking to the fragility of democracy and how that needs to be defended at all costs, and it's not a thing that can be let to set and forget in a way.
Yes, I mean, the stakes were already high in this election. The debate was particularly robust. The country is particularly divided over these two presidential candidates. We've been talking about this right for many, many months, but this was an event nobody wanted to see happen, and the great concern is, given how tinder dry the political environment is, you only need one match, one flame to potentially set things off. So I think that the focus will be on from all political leaders, and we heard it from President Biden, who I think got the tone absolutely right and spoke as a president should in these moments, appealing for calm, saying we don't want political violence, and further to that point, as we were discussing earlier, we don't expect to see any campaigning at all, at least for the next few days or so. The aim is to just reassure Americans, to lower the mood, ensure Donald Trump makes a full recovery, and then move on. Let's not forget the election is only a little over 100 days away, so we are moving towards the business end of that. But in the short term, no campaigning, and I think the Republican convention, at least as it was scheduled to start on Monday, American time, is very much up in the air.
Oh yeah, most certainly. You'd think that there'd be some big conversations happening about that right now. Michael Rowland from News Breakfast there in Washington, DC. Thank you. We will come back to you a little later. Appreciate your insights and analysis there from the White House.
Well, let's bring in election analyst Casey Briggs, who's with us in the studio. Good morning to you, Casey. What are you seeing in terms of the response and the reaction to what's happened in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, well, Joe, obviously it's such a dramatic event, the kind of event we have not seen in the sort of modern 24-hour news, social media era. And as you've just been discussing with Michael, you kind of can't divorce this from the fact that there is a political campaign happening. Now, we know Joe Biden's campaign is pausing advertising for the moment. Big question mark on what happens with the Republican National Convention that is supposed to be anointing Donald Trump as the nominee. We're obviously seeing political leaders on all sides condemning what's happened today. The current president, former presidents, Barack Obama and George W. Bush and others, political leaders in Congress. What I think the question mark is around how the rest of the country reacts. We've seen, as again, how Michael was just saying, democracy is fragile. Democracy in America can be particularly fragile. The way their institutions perform democracy with elections very distributed across counties and state governments, and lots of room for criticism and protest. And we've seen, what can happen when a concerted movement tries to interfere with American democracy. We know that it can be a fragile institution. Within minutes of this suspected assassination attempt on Donald Trump, online there were people making some very strong and strident claims about, who was responsible, the motivations, whether this was staged or not, the kinds of things you couldn't possibly know, even if they were true, within a couple of minutes. And we know that there are networks online that can spread these sorts of claims very quickly. So I'm very interested to see whether any of that does take hold and whether that could become a factor in an erosion of trust in elections, trust in politics in a very, very polarised environment that we're seeing in the US at the moment.
Yeah, Casey, we've been hearing people referring to the political situation and circumstances there as a tinderbox. I want to take you to what the photograph that has captured this moment, and it's been reported on CNN and elsewhere that it's by Pulitzer Prize-winning photographer Evan Vucci, who actually ran across the podium amidst the gunfire and screams. This is being said online to get that photo, which is now has taken on a life of its own, hasn't it?
Yeah, and Dan, you can actually, if you watch the vision of the incident that we've been watching all morning, you can actually see in the very corner, Evan himself is sort of standing to the side of stage. The moment that you hear that first pop of a bullet, he runs. He's sort of below the stage. You can't see him in that shot, but he runs shot to the right and snaps that photo within really just a matter of seconds. So actually an immense act of bravery by that photographer in running forward to snap that photo that I think is going to become, an iconic photo, one of those photos that will stick with us for some time to come.
We'll talk to you in a moment about some of the reaction that we're seeing on social media, because as you say, this is the first time that we've had this sort of suspected assassination attempt in this modern social media era. But before we discuss that, we'll bring you this relevant information, which is some Republican politicians that have been assigning blame to the Biden campaign and to the Democrats for Donald Trump's suspected assassination attempt. Republican Senator J.D. Vance posted on X saying he believed the Biden campaign's rhetoric directly contributed to the shooting. He says the Democratic campaign pushed the notion that Donald Trump is an authoritarian fascist who must be stopped at all costs.
Congressman Mike Collins squarely blamed US President Joe Biden, posting Joe Biden sent the orders, continuing on saying that the incendiary rhetoric must stop.
And Republican House Majority Leader Steve Scalise criticised Democratic leaders, writing that they had been fueling ludicrous hysteria, that Trump's potential re-election would be the end of democracy in America.
And Trump's advisor, Stephen Miller, echoed Scalise's comments, calling messages of the Democratic campaign a vile and monstrous lie that Trump is trying to end democracy. Continuing, this terrible hate and defamation must stop.
Casey, we want to get your thoughts on those reactions and posts on social media. In light of people saying that violence has no place in America and calling for calm, what are your responses?
Well, two things. First of all, we should just say those statements there, in context to those, we don't know the identity of the person that was responsible for this. We don't know what has motivated them. We may learn more as the investigation continues. So let's just put that very clearly on the table. There's a lot we don't know about this, and there are some politicians there, some very senior politicians there, casting aspersions and making some claims. The other piece of context is J.D. Vance, the first person that you shared the statement of there. There is speculation that he might be he might be the person that Donald Trump names as his running mate,
which
as his
was
vice
due to
presidential
happen
imminently. Imminently, could have been speculation that might have even happened today. If not, probably at the Republican National Convention, which again is due to take place in just a couple of days, or less than a couple of days. So we don't know who that vice presidential pick running mate will be just yet. J.D. Vance, though, was a name that was in the mix. He is very closely aligned with Donald Trump. He was a sort of Donald Trump pick when he was running in the midterms last election. So that's the other piece of context there is. So what we've got now is some is former presidents, leaders of the House, and sort of very senior members of Congress in the US saying this must be condemned. This was not okay. Political violence is not okay. Really not wanting to sheet blame at this point on anyone on both sides of politics. there we have a series of politicians that are more closely aligned with the Donald Trump camp saying something, a little bit different.
Well, and the points that they're making is that on one hand, we've got to take the heat out of this, while on the other hand, being seen to be ratcheting that up with some of the words that they're using.
It's certainly not going to help take the heat out, is it?
It wouldn't appear that way.
In a week where, again, yes, there's this massive event planned in Wisconsin. The Democrats are going to have their convention in a month. This election is heating up. It has been febrile. It has been very hotly contested. This is, I think, what many people would be worried about, thinking, is this going to become a flashpoint in, a bigger catalyst for something worse in terms of the conversation around America's democracy.
The other real big test, as we see this play out on social media, is the spread of misinformation and disinformation. What are we seeing in terms of that, and the risks involved in that rapid spread of information, whether it be true or not, on social media?
Yes, and misinformation spreads much faster than real information a lot of the time. So we've seen, all of these, I'm just trying to pull them up now, but we've seen a whole series of claims, and I won't repeat them all on the air because it is unverified misinformation and some of it is malicious, around, whether this was a staged event, whether this was, we've seen them from the statements there from leading politicians, whether, who was responsible, what the motivations were for this event. We know these things, this information can go viral very quickly. The question will be how seriously it gets taken, whether we can, and I think it's a bit early to know exactly what information sticks, what of that messaging sticks. I imagine pollsters will be out there in the next few days trying to work out, how has this event been perceived. But as I say, we know so little at the moment. The Secret Service is still investigating alongside the FBI. We don't know who is responsible, and we don't know what their motivations are. So anything you see online at the moment that's claiming to know what the motivations are or who the person was, it's not verified. We don't know the intention of the person making that claim, so just be wary.
And what's that saying? A lie can travel around the world before the truth has had a chance to tie its shoelaces.
Yeah.
We've got a statement in here from the Trump campaign and the RNC, which as was communicated earlier this evening, President Trump is doing well and grateful to law enforcement and first responders for their fast action. President Trump looks forward to joining you all in Milwaukee as we proceed with our convention to nominate him to serve as the 47th President of the United States. As our party's nominee, President Trump will continue to share his vision to make America great again. Sincerely, Donald J. Trump, and the Republican National Committee Chairman Michael Whatley and Co-Chairman Lara Trump there as well. So that would appear to indicate, Casey, that Milwaukee and this convention is still going ahead.
Well, Donald Trump is never one to, he's always one to make the most of any event that comes his way. This is an awful event that should not have happened, but we've seen, Donald Trump has been convicted in multiple courts of multiple offences, some of them criminal, some of them civil, and we've seen that he's used them as a catalyst for fundraising. We've seen that in public opinion, often these sorts of events can help him. Now, I'm not going to draw a comparison to this particular event, but it would not surprise me if the Republican campaign wants to push ahead. Now, whether it begins the convention at, right on time. It was supposed to begin on Monday. I'm unclear, but it's a 4-day long convention. So I'd be surprised if nothing happens there. It's a massive event. Thousands of people are in Wisconsin for it. Donald Trump, I think he's been monitored, but it does not seem like he's seriously injured. And we saw him walking off the stage, holding that fist high, walking off, with this sort of face of defiance. I imagine that he will be wanting to get back on the campaign trail as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and reports out of the US is that Thursday night is when Donald Trump is due to speak, and that the vice presidential announcement is likely on Wednesday. At least that's what is being reported across the board in the United States. Casey Briggs, thank you. We'll come back to you throughout the afternoon.
Let's now speak to, from Washington, by Politico's Daniel Lippman. Now, Daniel, we spoke to you just the other day about Joe Biden and that highly anticipated press conference that he was giving on the Democrat side. Certainly attention has switched to Republicans because of this rally and their upcoming national convention, and now this has happened. What's your initial response to what we've seen unfold in Pennsylvania?
You know, it's just shocking and an awful attempt against a major candidate's life. You're seeing statements across the board from Biden, from Obama, from Democrats and Republicans condemning this and trying to cool down the temperature of America. And we're seeing attempts by Republicans and Trump allies and the Trump campaign to kind of use this to their advantage. You know, you're seeing Donald Trump Jr., the former president's son, post content on social media with, you know, kind of saying that he's a fighter and, you know, he's someone who they had had talked about how he was, you know, potentially going to go to prison for his political work. But this is really dominating the headlines here, of course, and as a relief, not a relief, I mean, you know, what is, you know, Biden is not going to hear from any Democratic, you know, infighting anymore for a long time.
And on one hand, Daniel, there is the political reaction and response of which we've been seeing a lot. On the other hand, there is the broader reaction from American people who will be seeing this news and wondering what exactly is going on this close to a presidential election.
Yeah, I think that, you know, we have seen the temperatures rise in this country. We've seen previous attempts at political violence. We saw a top House leader, Steve Scalise, 13 years ago, there was an assassination attempt on his life on a baseball field in the D.C. suburbs by a Bernie Sanders supporter. We saw a couple of years ago a Republican candidate for New York governor, Lee Zeldin, someone rushed the stage to attack him. And so you have a situation where you know, there's going to be a massive investigation into how this happened and a big look at how to tighten security. And I'm sure people at the Secret Service, there's going to be hard questions asked about why this was not prevented.
The Associated Press is reporting that the Biden campaign, Daniel, is working to pull down all of its television ads as quickly as possible. This will no doubt affect campaigning in the coming days. But as we were saying with Casey Briggs, the Republican National Convention is just a couple of days away. And he was saying that there is a sense that perhaps from the Republican side and from Donald Trump himself, that they would be wanting to forge ahead and to show that this is not stopping them from doing their campaigning and moving forward. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think this is going to be part of Trump's campaign pitch for the next, you know, until the election. I'm sure they're going to change his speech in his Milwaukee acceptance speech on Thursday night to incorporate this what happened. And so I'm sure that the Democratic campaign will eventually go back on the air in a few days after the dust settles. But this is a major shock, and this is something that the Trump campaign they are. We all knew that this might happen when there was been so much hate against Trump since he entered the political scene in 2015.
And Daniel, we've seen already about the increase of security there at that event. Here's some live pictures from Trump Tower in New York, where we understand that there's a big police presence, as you can see there, and that even though Donald Trump doesn't live there anymore, but rather lives in Florida, that because of just how big that place is and how directly attributed to Donald Trump, that they've increased security there. What else are you seeing in terms of a security response unfolding there?
I think we're going to see President Biden's security be evaluated as well as other candidates. When a VP candidate is named for Trump in the next few days, I'm sure that they will add security. And so the Secret Service has been stretched in the past. With COVID, there were incidents where lots of agents were out, and so people were working overtime. But they are doing a full protocol check on any time Trump and Biden go out, but obviously they're going to add to those protocols and increase security at Mar-a-Lago, at Trump Tower, anywhere Trump and Biden are. And we're hearing about how Biden said tonight that he was attempting to reach Donald Trump to present his sympathies and prayers.
I'm not sure if you've been able to see some of the responses of people posting online, Daniel, but we were talking to Casey earlier about some of the dialogue and the language, some calling for calm and other language being potentially quite inflammatory to the situation. What are you seeing and what do you expect to see?
Yeah, this type of event in people and in Americans. And so, of course, there's going to be heinous people who say that, they wish that Trump had been, that the guy had been successful. Mentally ill people will say that. And people on the right will say, hey, was this a Biden campaign supporter? Who was this type of figure? When in reality, with all the guns that are in America and the mental illness crisis in this country, that it was likely someone who was mentally ill and wanted to be that person who made a terrible impact on history, and thankfully he was prevented. And so, we're still waiting the identity of the person and what their motivation was.
Right, Daniel Lippman from Politico there in Washington. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Supporters of President Trump who were at the rally have told Reuters the attempted assassination will only deepen division in the country.
Horrifying. I mean, the shot, and the stuff was coming off the side. For people to do that, I don't know. It's just, it's stunning. It's absolutely stunning. It's just going to drive people to even be more for him. Especially when that picture comes out.
It's pretty upsetting, isn't it?
I have a grandson. He just finished his first week in boot camp. If he's not president, there's going to be a war around the world. If he's not the president, and my grandson, he's going to have to go. My daughter still cries. She's been gone a week. He's at Fort Benning. Yeah, he's doing this for us. Hundreds of millions of dollars in legal fees. He doesn't have to do this, but he's fighting for us.
I was on the left-hand side on the ground next to the fence. And no one on the ground here. I was standing there, and all of a sudden it sounds like firecrackers going off. But then I heard the shots, and then all of a sudden somebody hollers, "Get down on the ground," and everybody's going down on the ground as low as they can get. Then the Secret Service comes running up through and says, "Everybody out, get out of here now." And they ushered us out of the area. And we're not sure, I couldn't be sure where the shooter was or where the shots came from, but they sounded awful close.
Yeah. You mentioned a firecracker sound and then shot sound. I heard that too.
Yes.
Sounded like different weapons, right?
Yeah. Well, I think the first was probably the shooter shooting at the president, and then I think what I heard secondly would have possibly been the Secret Service or some other officer shooting at the person that was shooting at President Trump.
I heard you just mentioned Butler Hospital. What do you know?
I was just told by my granddaughter that Butler Hospital is on lockdown. So lockdown because of the Secret Service is what was said on the TV. So I don't know if that's because of someone that was injured other than the president, or if they did take the president there. I could not tell you. I do not know.
Okay. What's your reaction to this whole situation?
I'm very upset. I can't say for sure who's behind this, but I'll tell you what. it's only going to cause more division in this country because of the people that support President Trump. And it's only going to make people hate Joe Biden even more, whether he had anything to do with it or not, and whether the Democratic Party had anything to do with it or not. It seems that they'll do anything to remain in power. And I'll tell you what, it's only going to cause more division in this country. And there's enough already. You're going to see more.
Yeah, quite an ominous warning there from a Trump supporter who was at the rally at the time of that attempted assassination in Pennsylvania. Those Trump supporters getting quite emotional about what they saw, but also saying that there was potentially going to be war if Donald Trump wasn't voted in as president when it comes to the election in November, saying that it was only going to cause more division in the US. And that is what so many people have been calling for. The opposite, which is a call for calm, saying that there is no place for violence in democracies and in politics in the US, and yeah, that real sort of appeal for people to lower the temperature and yeah, just declaring that there is no place for it.
Yeah, it's certainly been very heated, and a lot of the commentary that we're seeing so far has been the same. Let's recap what we know about the unfolding situation in the United States. Former United States President Donald Trump was shot on stage at a political rally in Pennsylvania. One attendee has been killed and 2 others are in a critical condition. In a statement, Donald Trump said he was fine and was being treated at a medical facility.
Now, multiple sources have confirmed that the shooter has been killed, and authorities are treating the incident as an attempted assassination. The shooting has drawn condemnation across the political aisle, with US President Joe Biden saying there's no place for this sort of violence in America.
The Secret Service has confirmed that they are investigating, and we've also seen a number of statements now coming out from political leaders across the United States, but also back here, Joe, at home. Earlier, we got a statement from Prime Minister Anthony Albanese saying the incident at former President Trump's campaign event in Pennsylvania today is concerning and confronting. There's no place for violence in the democratic process. I'm relieved to hear reports that former President Trump is now safe. And just a few minutes ago, we received a tweet from Tony Abbott, the former Prime Minister, saying that he was shocked at today's news. It's never right to try to settle a political argument with a gun. After the shooting of President Trump, everyone should remember that in a stable democracy, the things that unite us are always more important than anything that divides us. Meanwhile, thank God he's not seriously hurt. That one coming through just a moment ago.
Now, as you said, the Secret Service is investigating. They've confirmed that the shooter was located outside of the campaign rally at an elevated position. And we were speaking to people questioning how this could have happened at an event that has such high security measures. People were having to go through a metal detector and they weren't allowed to bring in large bags. Well, what we're now hearing from the Secret Service is that this person was located outside of the campaign rally. And so that brings that into context as well.
And interestingly, when we were speaking to Mike Willesee from Four Corners a little earlier, he has just come back from the United States and has a special episode airing tomorrow night. And he was saying that at one of the events for Donald Trump just across the border, they couldn't get into the actual event, but they were nearby, and someone had said, well, just come upstairs, and they had a bird's eye view from there from which to film. So that, of course, will become a big conversation point, won't it?
Well, let's bring in News Breakfast's Michael Rowland, who is joining us from just outside the White House in Washington, D.C. It's getting later in the evening there, Michael, but we are hearing how this is impacting the presidential campaign and campaigning. We know that Joe Biden's presidential campaign will be taking down television ads and pausing communications for the time being. But I think one of the big questions will be how this will affect the Republican campaign, particularly the Republican National Convention in just a couple of days.
We've got breaking news just coming in on that front, Joe, and I'll read the brief statement succinctly from the Trump campaign. As was communicated earlier tonight, President Trump is doing well and grateful to law enforcement and first responders for their fast action. President Trump looks forward to joining you all in Milwaukee, the convention venue, as we proceed with our convention to nominate him to serve as the 47th President of the United States. As our party's nominee, President Trump will continue to share his vision of making America great again. So confirmation from the Trump campaign. The Republican convention is proceeding as planned, kicking off Monday American time, culminating on Thursday with the acceptance speech by Donald Trump, which means that he's two things that's going ahead, but also the former president is going to be in a well enough condition to attend the convention, but also speak later in the week. And also another bit of breaking news, CBS America is confirming the former president has left the hospital. He was taken for observation and to treat that injury above his right eye that we all saw occur at that rally. So that's another bit of good news as well. So the convention's going ahead. The Democrat ads have been taken off the air. What you'll see, I think, is you'd hope to see a toning down of some of the rhetoric, a toning down of some of the attacks from both sides as this nation processes what has been an absolutely shocking event in its history, the attempted assassination of the former president.
And interesting news about that update of Donald Trump and his health situation right now, because that has been a lot of concern, particularly across social media and on news networks across the United States. We've also been hearing a lot about the security situation in New York at Trump Tower, behind you, Michael, there at the White House in Washington, D.C., and of course in Pennsylvania. We're just seeing some live pictures from New York with a very big police presence there outside of Trump Tower. This would appear to be a very strong reaction in terms of security of places and, of course, people.
Yes, and a not surprising reaction, let's be honest. The Secret Service has a very well-established protocol. Any threat to the president, any threat to a presidential candidate is met with an overwhelming response, and we've seen that play out, not just on the stage after Donald Trump was, as he said, shot on the top of the right here, with those Secret Service agents coming up, forming this human shield around him, getting him off the stage, getting him into the safety of the armoured limo and off to the hospital. But here at the White House earlier today, late this afternoon our time, once news came through, this park behind me, Lafayette Park, which leads directly to the White House, was cleared very quickly. Some of our colleagues were on site at the time and were told in no uncertain terms to pack up and leave. We've seen that as well, as you say, around Trump Tower in New York. And what I can expect to see, and again, it would be no surprise, once campaigning does get back on track, a massive increase in security and tighter security procedures for spectators at rallies for both Donald Trump and Joe Biden. We have entered, sadly, a new universe in this already sharply divided election campaign.
Michael, we have heard some comments from some Republican politicians who have in fact started assigning blame to the Biden campaign and to the Democrats for this assassination attempt. What are you seeing in terms of the response from the Republican side and from some of those Republican politicians?
Well, the Republican side, the overwhelming response from all within the Republican Party, even some of Donald Trump's sworn enemies. I saw a tweet from Liz Cheney just a while ago where Liz Cheney, being one of the Republican voices who came out strongly against Donald Trump, as a result, she lost her pre-selection in the last midterm elections and is now no longer in Congress. One of the people who spoke out against Donald Trump and copying the political consequences, she came out with a tweet expressing her horror, her disgust with what happened and wishing Donald Trump a quick recovery. I have seen one tweet from a Georgia Republican, and I'm paraphrasing it, but the tweet read words to the effect of Joe Biden ordered this, as in ordered the shooting. And that has been howled down, as it should, by most sensible people. But at the same time, an indication of some of the thoughts, some of the motivations of some involved in the political system here, and I worked here 15 years ago. I've come back on a regular basis, most recently every 2 years or so. It's always been divided, Washington politics. I've never never seen it as divided and as polarised in a nasty way as I have seen at the moment, certainly before what happened today, and we all saw where that sort of rhetoric and arguments can lead us.
And Michael Rowland from News Breakfast, thank you.
Now, US President Joe Biden spoke earlier about the attempted assassination, the assassination attempt rather. He was saying that, among others, he was saying there is no place in America for this kind of violence.
But the bottom line is that the Trump rally was a rally that he should have been able to be conducted peacefully without any problem. But the idea that there's political violence or violence in America like this is just unheard of. It's just not appropriate. And everybody must condemn it. Everybody. I'll keep you informed, and if I am able to speak to Donald, I'll let you know that as well. But so far, it appears he's doing well, number one. Number two, that they're thoroughly investigating what happened to anyone else in the audience. We have some reports, but not final reports. And every agency in the federal government, I'm going back to my phone to speak with the federal agencies that are being put together again to give me an updated briefing. Has anything happened? They learned any more in the last couple hours. So thank you very much, and I hope I get to speak to them tonight, and I'll get back to you if I do, okay?
Mr. President, do you think there was an assassination attempt?
I don't know enough to, I have an opinion, but I don't have any facts. So I want to make sure we have all the facts before I make any more comments. Thank you.
Are you worried, President? That's US President Joe Biden speaking there a little earlier, about a couple of hours ago, in fact, in Delaware. That was at around just past 8 o'clock. It's now just past 10 o'clock in the evening, so it's getting later. But Joe Biden saying there is no place for this violence in America. At that stage, he had not spoken to Donald Trump, but he said he was hoping to.
Yeah. Well, joining us now from Washington, D.C. is Steve Herman, who's Chief National Correspondent at Voice of America. Good evening, your time. Thank you very much for joining us. What's your reaction?
Pleasure. Well, obviously a lot of things have changed tonight. I think political campaigning, we were already in a very divisive atmosphere in this country. It's going to get worse. We're seeing immediate threats against reporters who were at the rally. The talk on social media is really pretty extreme. On one hand, you have people saying that they believe that this was all something that was staged. And then you have others saying that there's going to have to be revenge and retribution for this, and some of this anger being directed at the media.
What can you tell us about the threats against those reporters, the media that were there?
Well, the reporters, of course, are mostly in a pen at the back of the rally. There are some pool photographers that were up front and performed very bravely, actually running across the front of the riser when the shots were running out so that they could get better pictures. But immediately after this happened, there were attempts for some to get into the pen to attack reporters, comments such as, "You're going to be next," that sort of thing, a very dark and ominous mood, obviously.
Steve, we've heard from the Trump campaign saying that President Trump looks forward to joining you in Milwaukee as we proceed with our convention to nominate him to serve as the 47th President of the United States. And there was discussion after this assassination attempt about how this would change the campaign. And of course, we're a couple of days out from the Republican National Convention. There was discussion around whether that would be delayed. It appears from the Trump campaign that is not the case. Does that surprise you that they are forging ahead like this?
No, I'm also headed to Milwaukee tomorrow. Security is extremely tight. There are many layers. You have to have different passes to get into the venue, and then on the floor of the venue or even into the inner perimeter in the city. Perhaps we can expect that that's going to be even tighter in the days ahead, but there's no doubt that the presidential candidate for the party is going to have to show up to accept that nomination. And we also expect on Monday night what was supposed to be the big news for that day, that Trump will announce who is going to be his running mate, the candidate for vice president to be on the ticket. We haven't had any indications yet that may be pushed back, but they appear to be forging ahead. Of course, they've been planning this for many, many months, and there are all sorts of security protocols that have been in place. New York Police Department is saying that security is being tightened around the Trump Tower in New York and on the streets of New York. And we're hearing from the Justice Department, from the FBI, and from the Attorney General of the United States that their primary goal is to protect the president and the presidential candidate from the Republican Party, and that there'll be a thorough investigation, which we're just told a few minutes ago the Federal Bureau of Investigation is taking the lead on.
And Steve, we're just seeing reports out of the United States. I'm not sure if you've seen them yet while you're waiting to talk to us, that President Biden is reported to be leaving Delaware early and heading back to the White House as a result of this event, if that's the case, clearly wanting to be back there to lead a lot of this investigation and to be speaking from the White House.
That's not surprising. We had heard a little bit earlier that was likely to happen, but it was not official at that point. This is obviously a very, very serious incident. The Biden campaign has canceled all of its advertising in the media, effective immediately. You know, we're basically at a situation where a former president of the United States and the president, the candidate who's leading in the polls, a lot of the polls, came within a couple of inches of losing his life. Multiple shots fired at him, and one hitting him. So it's an extremely serious situation in this country right now.
Steve, you are the Chief National Correspondent at Voice of America. I want to get your insights into how this is being covered by the US media, not just the traditional US media, but also the social media as well.
Well, as I mentioned, things are quite divisive on social media in the past couple of hours, and it's you know, I haven't had time to really pay attention to too much of it because I've been writing stories and going on the air about this, but especially on the platform formerly known as Twitter, now called X, it is really dark, although what we're seeing across the political spectrum from most of the politicians and former presidents of the United States and leaders around the world are really coming together, wishing Trump a speedy recovery and being very grateful that he was not seriously wounded, and saying flatly that there's no room for this type of political violence in America. We've heard that from Joe Biden this evening and just about everybody in his chain of command.
And in amongst all of this, there already, Steve, has been a big conversation about the saturation of media, about echo chambers, misinformation, disinformation. What's your observation of how all of that is playing into this global conversation we're having right now?
Well, we've never had anything happen like this in the age of social media, right? The last such situation like this was the attempt on Ronald Reagan early in his presidency, 1981, and it's a whole different ballgame now. The way things travel very fast, and we know that there are so-called bad actors, some of them working for foreign governments who, when there is division in this country, are very quick to get into that mix and spread misinformation and try to stir people up. We don't know who's behind some of that right now, but it's very clear that there's all sorts of conspiracy theories going around right now.
Steve, we heard from Homeland Security Secretary who is saying that the department is taking every possible measure to ensure the safety of President Biden, Trump and their respective campaigns. He said maintaining the security of the presidential candidates and their campaign events is one of our department's most vital priorities. Given that they are saying that and that we've seen this assassination attempt, there must have been some security failure at some point. I know the shooter we've heard was not inside of the event, they were outside of the event, but no doubt as a result of this there will be changes in the security around the presidential nominees.
Well, there may be a request for Donald Trump to change the way he does these rallies in these open spaces. There's always a risk. You never can be 100% certain, but from the initial indications is that the gunman had a rifle. This is unconfirmed information, and was about 120, 150 meters away on sort of the roof of a building. I've been out at these rallies with President Trump when he was president, and with President Biden, and when they were on the campaign trail 4 years ago. Security is extremely tight. There are all sorts of sweeps of the venue and the surrounding spaces that go on for hours and days before this event. And yeah, where there was definitely a security failure is this was not something that happened inside the venue where they were screening the people, but from outside. But obviously someone who had a close enough and accurate shot to be able to wound the former president. And unfortunately, we know that one spectator has died who was shot, and 2 others are reported to be in critical condition.
Steve Herman from Voice of America, thank you very much for your time this evening.
You're welcome.
And I will just mention that we are expecting to hear from Anthony Albanese, from the Prime Minister, who has already released a statement in response to this assassination attempt in Pennsylvania, but he is due to speak in Canberra at some point. We did have a live shot of the media setting up for that event, but that's gone for now, but we are expecting it to happen at any moment, so we'll bring you those comments.
Yeah, from the Blue Room in Parliament House, meaning a very important comment from the Prime Minister and from the head of government, the Prime Minister has described the incident as concerning and confronting. In a statement earlier, Anthony Albanese says the incident at former President Trump's campaign event in Pennsylvania today is concerning and confronting. There is no place for violence in the democratic process. Prime Minister Albanese also expressed relief that former President Trump is safe.
We've also heard this morning from the Ambassador to the United States, Kevin Rudd, saying all Australians are shocked by the attack on former President Trump at his campaign rally this evening in Pennsylvania. Violence has no place in our democracies. That's a sentiment that's been repeated by so many people today in response to this. Kevin Rudd goes on to say it's a relief to see that President Trump is safe, and our thoughts are with him and his family.
Yeah, and we are seeing that live shot, and we'll bring you the comments from Prime Minister Anthony Albanese as soon as he stands up to speak. In the United States, Donald Trump's daughter has also posted to X saying, "Thank you for your love and prayers for my father and for the other victims of today's senseless violence in Butler, Pennsylvania. I'm grateful to the Secret Service and all the other law enforcement officers for their quick and decisive actions today." Ivanka continuing on, "I continue to pray for our country. I love you, Dad, today and always."
So those are some responses that we've seen. We also, of course, heard from US President Joe Biden a couple of hours ago as well, also reiterating that sense that there is no place for violence in the US. He thanked the Secret Service for their involvement, which also Donald Trump also thanked the Secret Service for their quick action. You saw them rushing in after those shots were fired to shield Donald Trump and protect him and then take him off into that vehicle. So there has been a lot of thanks and acknowledgement for the Secret Service for their quick action, not just in protecting Donald Trump, but also securing that area and protecting the crowd, although we know that there have been some deaths as well, tragically as well.
Yeah, and President Biden making the point that there is no place in America for this violence. He said it's sick. We cannot allow this to happen. We cannot condone this. President Biden saying the Trump rally should have been able to be conducted peacefully without any problems. So that was the comments that we heard from the President, Joe Biden, a couple of hours ago, as you say, and had also made the point, Joe, that he had been trying to get in touch with Donald Trump just to check in on a one-to-one basis to say, are you okay? And was going to update later.
Yes, and we do know that Donald Trump was receiving medical treatment but has been released and is doing fine. We heard from him. He posted on Truth Social, which is his social media channel. He's saying, I want to thank the United States Secret Service and all the law enforcement for their rapid response on the shooting. He was also saying that nothing is known at this time about the shooter, who is now dead. He said, I was shot with a bullet that pierced the upper part of my right ear. I knew immediately that something was wrong in that I heard the whizzing sound, shots, and immediately felt the bullet ripping through the skin. So he said much bleeding took place, so I realised what was happening. So quite a graphic account from Donald Trump there about what he went through at that rally in Pennsylvania. He also ended with saying, God bless America.
Yeah, and it's been really interesting to see, Joe, the comments, particularly from those who are involved in politics in the United States. There are really two camps, aren't there? There are those who are saying we've got to take the heat right out of this and we have to be changing the language and really shifting it so that it doesn't get to this point. And then on the other hand, we've seen a number of politicians who have seemingly been escalating this kind of language as well. And we are standing by, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, did you, Joe, that the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, will be speaking. Here's a live shot of the Blue Room from Parliament House in Canberra, where we're expecting the Prime Minister imminently to make comments and respond to this. Now, whether or not there will be questions as part of that, that remains to be seen, or whether this will just be a statement from Prime Minister Albanese. We are waiting and standing by and being told that the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, will arrive momentarily, and of course we can see that there. And it was, Joe, a very similarly strong statement from Prime Minister Albanese calling out the violence that we've seen.
Yeah, saying that the incident is concerning and confronting. Again, as so many other leaders have said, there's no place for violence in the democratic process, almost feeling as though there is that appeal for calm in the coming days after a violent event has happened in the US, where we already had heightened tensions around the election leading up to November. There was already a heightened sense of tension in the country, and now after we have this violent event, there's a chorus of people who are calling for calm and for that declaring that there is no place for violence.
Yeah, and one of those was former President Barack Obama, who says there is absolutely no place for political violence in our democracy. Although we don't all know exactly what happened, we should all be relieved that former President Trump wasn't seriously hurt, and use this moment to recommit ourselves to civility and respect in our politics. Michelle and I are wishing him a quick recovery.
And on that security, the FBI has said that it will be leading the probe into the shooting. So the FBI has assumed the role of the lead federal law enforcement.
And here's the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese.
Thanks for joining me. Along with all Australians, I was shocked by the terrible scenes at former President Trump's campaign event in Pennsylvania. I'm relieved by the news that the former president is safe and doing fine, and I wish him and his family well. I applaud the swift work of US security agencies. I'm also saddened by reports that a member of the audience has lost their life and other attendees have been injured, and I send my condolences on behalf of Australia to their loved ones in this time of grief. Let us be clear. The people at this event, the candidate, the crowd, the free press covering it, were all participating in the democratic process. In Australia, as in the United States, the essence and the purpose of our democracies is that we can express our views, debate our disagreements, and resolve our differences peacefully. We do so with respect for each other and in the spirit of a shared love of our country. Any act of violence is an affront to that and must be condemned unequivocally. This was an inexcusable attack on the democratic values that Australians and Americans share and the freedom that we treasure. These values are ones that unite our two countries. It's the basis of our alliance, is those shared values between our peoples as great democratic nations. And all Australians stand with our friends in the United States at this difficult time. Happy to take a couple of questions. Hang on, whoa.
You've spoken recently about the increased political vandalism and whether that would increase to violence. Do the actions of today increase your concern, and will there be any changes to security here?
Well, the security agencies will examine these events. There's a great deal of cooperation as Five Eyes partners between Australia and the United States. And I'm sure that there will be lessons to be learnt. I say again, though, we must lower temperature of debate. There is nothing to be served by some of the escalation of rhetoric that we see in some of our political debate, political discourse in the democratic world. It's a phenomenon that's not unique to the United States. And I just say we should be able to have political discussion and disagreement, do it respectfully, and that is really important.
Yeah, have you spoken to Ambassador Rudd? Have you been briefed by Ambassador Rudd? What insights has he shared with you, or what insights maybe do you have, or reflections on the impact of this on the race?
Yeah, I have spoken to Ambassador Rudd this morning. He has conveyed his thoughts and concern very directly to the newly appointed chair of the Republican National Committee. He's received a response of appreciation for Australia's concern. Ambassador Rudd is due to attend the Republican National Convention. He'll attend both conventions as is appropriate. And Ambassador Rudd has done a rather extraordinary job of becoming known to all of the significant players in the United States, which is why he was able to have that contact immediately, and that is appropriate. I say with regard to political issues, this isn't a day for politics. This is a day to unite, to express our concern, regardless of one's political views. There is no place for the events that we saw today.
Prime Minister, can I just... Prime Minister, understandably, the US will be very internally focused in the wake of this incident. Do you have any insight or understanding as to how this might affect work already underway between Australia and the US? Is there going to be any impact in any of the areas we cooperate?
Oh, look, we cooperate with each other on a day-by-day basis. Our security agencies, of course, are linked through the Five Eyes. Our Defence Forces cooperate, and the economic relationship that we have as well is very significant. This is a relationship not just between leaders, but between peoples. And today, that is why Australians' thoughts will go to our American friends.
Prime Minister, do you think this is a result of the hyper-polarisation that we are seeing in the US? And you said it's not unique to just the United States. Are you worried about that flowing on in Australia as well?
I've said very clearly that I'm concerned, not related to this incident. I've been talking for a long period of time about people having conflict fatigue in this country, about being able to have political discourse which is respectful I think that that's the essence of democracy. There's a lot of shouting going on. You know, a point is not made more significant by it being done in capital letters. Social media is clearly having an impact as well. And, you know, there's still much that we don't know about the incident, can I say this? And there's nothing to be gained from speculating. We don't know motives, all of these issues. So I do urge, one of the things I urge everyone to do is to exercise caution when reading unverified reports of the events and to seek out credible news sources. We all need to be on guard against those seeking to use misinformation to create division. And this is a time for unity, it's a time for calm. It's a time for allowing the authorities in the United States to do their jobs.
Prime Minister, a few weeks ago, experts warned a parliamentary committee into right-wing extremism movements that election-related violence in the US could have implications here in Australia. What exactly is your government doing to address that issue, and are you confident in the protocols that are in place for MP safety, given the heightened threats recently?
Well, we continue to monitor these issues. I've expressed my concern that people who just dismiss actions outside electorate offices, these things can escalate, which is why they need to be called out unequivocally and opposed. The sort of incidents that we've seen outside some electorate offices are inappropriate. People can express their views democratically, whether that be in favour of issues or against issues. We have peaceful demonstrations are fine. Some of the incidents that we've seen certainly are not. They've crossed the line.
Prime Minister, I just want to follow on from MP safety. I understand that it's a developing situation and security agencies are still talking to each other, but has the AFP or will the AFP reach out to MPs? Will extra security be offered in the wake of this?
The AFP do their job, and one of the ways that they do their job is not by me speculating out here, but by putting in place appropriate measures.
Prime Minister, what do you think it will do to our democracy if it is that politicians need to be more removed from the public and unable to move about?
Well, I think that would be a tragedy if that occurred. I just had 3 days in Queensland. I went to Mount Coot-tha in Brisbane, will be familiar to certainly to Queenslanders. It's essentially a lookout over that great city of Brisbane. I don't have controlled environments. I did that. I walked through the city of Brisbane to and from appointments. On Friday, I had a meeting with the Prime Minister of Tuvalu, Prime Minister Teo. I yesterday had a press conference in the Botanic Gardens. I walked to the Botanic Gardens. I walked through the Botanic Gardens. I engaged with people who are exercising, people who just turned up there. I walk through supermarkets and shopping centres regularly. With Ali France, we went to a local coffee shop and area, shopping area, precinct in the electorate of Dixon the other morning. As I said, in Ryan, I did at Mount Coot-tha. In Ford, we went to a TAFE and we mixed with a whole range of students and people in the community in Logan Lee. That's really important. It's really important that people be able to do that. One of the things that I find about our great democracy is the great privilege that it is of being able to chat with people who aren't expecting to see you. You get a different level of feedback because it's very real. It's not staged for the cameras. You get to engage, and here in this city of Canberra, people are a bit more relaxed, I've got to say. In Canberra, they expect to see the PM. People normally say hello to Toto before they say hello to me here. And that's a good thing that people can do that. You know, I go and buy the dog food and stuff here at various Woolies around Woden or Dixon. I know where they all are because it's a good thing that you do that. I think it's a great thing. You don't see, you know, the President of the United States, I'm sure, doesn't go to the local shopping centre. I think it's a good thing that here in Australia I can. It's a good thing that I'm able to walk around, and I don't want to see that diminished. I don't want to see that diminished. There's a report today, you know, I went to see Radio Birdman last weekend at Sydney Uni, a concert in the middle of people. People say hi. I obviously have security with me at all times, and that's just part of the job. But that's a good thing that people can see that, and I sincerely hope that in Australia that can continue. Thank you very much. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Graham.